I have a strong interest in ghosts. Not that I always have, but I gained it recently. I'm a sheriff's deputy in Arizona. In a large city with a high crime rate, if you're a cop, then all of your friends are cops. I went to the police academy with a guy named Jeff. He was a short, stocky kid about my age. We were the only ones in the class who were the same age, so we bonded. We pushed each other through the academy. After we graduated, we were surprised to find that we would be working in the same district on the same shift for the same supervisor. We worked the late shift and always went to lunch with one another, usually around 11:30 p.m. We would go to my mother's house and eat. Jeff didn't trust cooks at fast food restaurants at 11:30 p.m., especially when they looked at us as if they had just gotten out of the state prison and were serving a cop. My mother worked at Walmart as a manager. She got off at work at 11 and was extremely delighted to have us every night. She lived in a rather bad area of the city. My mother and Jeff would laugh and joke. They would swap stories and try to convince each other that their job was worse than the other's job. Jeff would always let her win the argument. She called him her son. Jeff and myself went skiing every year in the mountains of Utah. It was a vacation that him and his father took every year, and he made it with me after his father passed. Jeff loved my mother so much that he invited her to Utah one year. As my mother was with an instructor learning to ski, Jeff looked at me and said, "Jerry, I can't take it anymore. The big city is draining the life out of me." Puzzled by this, I asked him what he was talking about, that he had loved his job and was the best cop in the valley at what he did. He explained that he was sick of seeing car accidents with dead bodies, chasing down a crack addict in the dark, getting shot at, etc. I said, "Fine, what are you gonna do, quit?" I was rather pissed off. He said, "No, just quit working there." I want to move to an area like this, cold, quiet, and comfortable. I yelled at him something very childish. "What about my mom? You'll kill her here. She loves you." He said, "Don't worry. I'll stop by from time to time to check on her." People just don't understand the strong connection that police officers get with their partners who watch their back every night. We returned from the trip, and Jeff did as he said he would. He packed everything up and moved to Colorado. Not long after I was transferred to day shift, I told my mother that Jeff had just transferred to the other side of the valley. It's what Jeff wanted. He couldn't stand me and my mother hounding him to stay. And with that, here is the story. Jeff died about 4 months after arriving in Colorado. Truly how every police officer would want. He saved a little boy that had fallen through the ice in a river. Shortly after retrieving the boy, the ice he was laying on gave way. I never told my mother. She was getting up there in years and would not have been able to stand losing her son. I received a call from my mother in the middle of the night, about 3 weeks after Jeff's funeral. She said, "Jerry, I want you to come over and spend the night. Jeff just ran off a burglar, but I'm still scared out of my mind." I was very confused and asked her to explain. She started the story. My mother was in her living room. She had just gotten off of work. Remember, it's after 11 p.m. She was watching TV and eating her dinner. From the other room, she heard the sound of metal grinding. She got up and went into her bedroom and seen that there was a man at the window with a screwdriver trying to get in. She ran back to the front room and picked up the phone to call 911. There was no dial tone. My mother said at that moment she just panicked. She had remembered that I had told her that burglars who break in to take things usually don't cut the phone line, but burglars who plan on hurting or killing someone do. She started to scream, "Help! Help! Help!" over and over. At that moment, she heard a loud crash and some thumping around. She heard a man's voice scream and then heard someone running away. She stood there, unable to move, not knowing what was going on outside. Bang, bang, bang from the door. Still, my mother didn't move. "Mrs. Smith!" She heard someone call her name from the outside. "Yes, who's there?" she yelled. "It's me, Jeff." She opened the door and seen Jeff standing in a blue uniform. Weird, because we wear brown and tan uniforms. "My God," she said, "thank God you're here. Did you get him?" "Nah, but he won't come back, I promise. Come inside and get something to eat. You look tired." "No, I need to get back." "Okay," she said, "but keep an eye on my house for me. I'm calling Jerry to come over." He said, "No, don't do that. I'll keep an eye out." I raced to my mother's house in a panic. I didn't know whether to be scared or mad at the burglar, or just that my mother had seen someone else. I got to my mother's house and ran in. She was still visibly shaken from the burglar. I sat down next to her. I grabbed her hands and placed them on my cheeks. I started to cry and told my mother, "Jeff is dead, Mom. He died over 3 months ago. I couldn't stand to tell you." She refused to hear of it. She explained that he was just here about an hour ago. I explained that Jeff did not want her to try and stop him from going to Colorado, so he had forced me to lie. I went on to explain that Jeff had promised me that he would look after her, and he was fulfilling that promise. My mother collapsed and laid on the couch all night crying. I found out that Jeff was in a blue uniform that night because he had been buried in a blue uniform, the color he wore in Colorado. My mother figured at the time he was working something like a special gang unit or something that night. I will never forget Jeff or what he did for my mother when he was alive and even after. It should show how much a promise is concrete in the heart of a respectable man. So every year when the time comes, when Jeff and his dad used to go on their ski trip, I go to his grave and I think about him. I thank him. I thank him for the times he had saved my life, times he saved strangers' lives, and the time he saved my mother's life. May God hold you in his arms. Thank you for reading. Whilst in the army, I've posted too many a place, but nothing like Hammersmith's Barracks, Hartford, Germany. Originally a Nazi camp back in the Second World War, the camp has a lot of history to it. The buildings in the actual camp are actually like the ones in the film Buffalo Soldiers, just to give you some idea. I arrived there in September 2004 and thought nothing of the block at first glance, but one thing that would puzzle me was in the basement. There were still the old steel cell doors of when it was still occupied by Nazi Germany. What were such doors needed for? Anyway, as time went on, I started to find out some very interesting facts about the camp itself. Like one, for instance, was the cobblestones, which were very subsided. Why hadn't those been replaced? Well, the reason why was due to the fact that when occupied by the previous owners, they took it upon themselves to bury the dead underneath the road, then brick over the bodies. I kid you not. Anyway, that's just the inside of the history of the camp. There have been various sightings, and people have heard noises, which mostly occur at night. There used to be a small corridor situated on the second floor where the females lived, and in this time, they have reported on numerous occasions of seeing a young girl aged about 8 or 9. One girl states that she would sit on the end of her bed while she slept, and when she awoke, she would find a dark body-like shadow of a young girl with long hair watching her. There were also talks of this ghost when she returned to the UK. On leave for 2 weeks, the room was adjacent to hers, which at the time was occupied by 2 other females, when they started noticing that a dark shadow would enter the room during the nighttime, and things would be moved from one place to another. When the females were moved out of this block and males were moved into this corridor, all the strange things happening occurred stopped. I'm no expert on this matter, but I believe maybe the young girl felt a motherly love or connection to these females. I, on the other hand, was living at the opposite side of the block at the time, when I found myself awoken one night by a noise. When I was fully awake, there was total silence, and immediately thought to myself that I must have been dreaming. I got out of bed to go to the bathroom, which was only down the corridor from my room. Just before entering, I could hear a voice, which seemed as if it was talking to themselves in a foreign language. I entered thinking that maybe someone may have just had a little too much of a drink that night, and I found the bathroom deserted, and the lights were all switched off. I was shocked, and turned the lights on immediately to find a dark shadow moving from one side of the room to the other. It was the strangest thing I had ever seen. Well, I'll tell you now, I did not use that bathroom that night. I decided to go on to a different floor. Shortly after that, I returned back to the UK, and so I did not have to undergo any more midnight hauntings. Thanks for reading. I've always believed in ghosts, witches, and the paranormal, etc. My grandma has always been involved with ghosts, and it seems that they always follow her. I now think that I have one following me. Anyways, to the story at hand. It was a few years ago. I was about 17, and I was having my best friend and my cousin over for the night. It was only us, my mom, and 2 younger sisters were visiting my aunt in another town. Well, that night we were in my room, and when the door is open, you can see the bathroom across the hallway. Also, with the way my bed is set up, you can see into the hallway when sitting there or lying there on my bed. My cousin Destiny got up to go potty. Sam and myself were lying on the bed watching a movie. I heard the bathroom door open, and I looked over just as Destiny came running back into the room looking scared. Sam and I looked at each other puzzled, then asked what was wrong. Destiny said that when she had gone into the bathroom, she had leaned over the sink to start brushing her teeth after going potty and washing her hands, and when she stood back up, it felt like someone was behind her watching her in the mirror. I'm getting chills just thinking about that day. Well, Sam was like, yeah, right. She is not a big believer in ghosts, I don't think, and me, being a believer and wanting to help out, got up to go to the bathroom to show Destiny that she was just tripping and that there was nothing wrong. Destiny stayed in the bathroom and watched as I walked across the hall to the bathroom. Well, right before I went to step over the threshold, I stopped, dead in my tracks, and for some reason my body froze and refused to go any further into the bathroom. I was a bit creeped out because I hadn't ever done that before. I hurried back to the room, and I was like, oh my. Sam was still skeptic, and she walked into the bathroom plain as day. I didn't get it. Destiny made Sam stay in there as she finished brushing her teeth, and I just stayed out of the bathroom the rest of the night. The next morning, everything was fine. I could walk into the bathroom no problem, and even Destiny could close the door when she went in there now. Later on that morning, though, I walked around the corner to get into the bathroom to take a shower, my clothes and towels in my arms. I stopped. It felt like my eyes bulged, and I couldn't get my breath at first. There, standing in front of the drawn shower curtain, drawn as enclosed shower curtain, was a black outline of a man a couple of inches taller than me. I am 5'9". Well, I freaked out and I ran to the phone and called my grandma, who I figured would know what to do in this situation. She told me to go back to the bathroom, and I did, and the outline of the man was still there, standing right in front of the bathtub. My grandma then asked if all the doorways had been crossed with holy water. I said yes, because all of them had, including the windows. That is, until it came to my room. I'm not a Satanist or anything, but that's my shrine, my room, and I don't need holy water to protect me. So, only the outside of my room's door had been crossed. Well, my grandma then told me to start chanting these words. I don't remember what they were, but they made me feel at ease. Next thing I know, the black outline of the man starts to move, and it goes through the bathroom wall, right into my room. I was happy to have it out of the bathroom, but now it was in my room. What was I supposed to do? Well, it ended up that I didn't have a problem with it in my room. I didn't get the creepy crawly feeling, so I think that I either left my house through one of the walls in my room that hadn't been crossed with holy water, or maybe I was just stuck in the bathroom and was trying to get back to my room. I hadn't told my mom and sisters about the ghost. My baby sister was young, and I didn't want to scare her real bad. But ever since that incident in the bathroom where the ghost or whatever it was moved from the bathroom into my room, my two younger sisters always refused to be in my room alone. Weird. And that's my story about the ghost in the bathroom. Feel free to write me if you like. More stories to come. I have more, plus I have some that my dad, mom, uncle, and aunt and grandma have told me. All true. Thanks for reading. I grew up in an orphanage, having lost both my parents in a car accident when I was 6 years old. This paranormal encounter occurred in my third year of stay at this orphanage. I must describe, the orphanage was pretty dilapidated and had only 4 dormitories, one for girls, infant to 8 years old, for girls, 8 to 18 years old, and where I belonged, one for boys, and so on and so forth. This happened right at midnight when me and 2 of my friends went out of our dormitory to head to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. It was a very chilly night, I must recall, and the 3 of us wore nighties. After we gotten a drink, we hurried upstairs trying to avoid being caught by the caretaker. Just as we were about to enter our dormitory, me and Hannah, I can't really remember if that was her name, noticed that Elizabeth was not with us. Out of nowhere, we saw her enter the boys' dorm in top speed. It was like seeing a curtain on a very fast horse. Out of curiosity, we peered into the boys' dorm and found Elizabeth jumping on an empty bed, as if it were a trampoline, while the boys were sound asleep. We called her, but received no answer. Then, in just a snap, she faded into nothing. At that, me and Hannah were scared out of our wits and ran to our dormitory. Once there, we covered ourselves with our sheets, shivering in fear. I can remember I think Hannah was actually crying and praying for the Lord's Prayer at the same time. That morning, when we were off to prepare for our classes, we saw Elizabeth, who was well and smiling. She even greeted us and sat with us in class. Me and Hannah just figured it was all a dream, but we were 9 back then. Now, I'm 30 years old, and I know surely it wasn't just a dream. I think it's what paranormal experts call an encounter with a doppelganger, and let me tell you, it was pretty horrifying. Other experiences I had in my 10-year-old stay at the orphanage was the spontaneous on and off activity of the lights in the classrooms, dormitories, libraries, dining halls, etc. Grown-ups talking as if they were having some conference in a flower garden outside at the back of the orphanage in the middle of the night, and the beautiful chorals singing of poems, which I believe came from the dining hall, that occurred in different times of the day. I strongly believe that the orphanage was haunted. But what gets me wondering up to now is that why the people in charge never did anything about it when some children, especially the adolescents, started complaining. Well, that's my story, and I hoped you liked it. I apologize for the length. Thank you for reading. The following story happened to me when I was 4 or 5 years old. This experience occurred during 1944 or 45 in Kissimmee, Florida. My mother and I were waiting by the side of the highway, Orange Blossom Trail, for my father and grandmother to drive us to Orlando. Back then, there was very little traffic on the trail as it was known. We watched as the black Ford approached from the south, with the two of them inside. Neither person appeared to notice the old lady and small child waving at them. I saw both their faces through the windshield. The two people looked like my father and grandmother. Same clothing, etc. The car disappeared around the corner. We were both surprised that the car did not stop. My old lady, mother, started rambling and talking some very unkind comments about my father and grandmother. Several minutes later, another black Ford appeared from the south. This time the car slowed down and stopped, several feet ahead of us. It was my father and grandmother. We got into the car and asked them why they drove past us the first time. Their response was that they just got there. My father indicated that it must have been another couple that looked a lot like them. After a few minutes of arguing, my old lady just went blank and stopped talking about it. 12 years later, I asked my father if he remembered the incident. He still remembered the fuss my old lady made when she got into the car. He indicated that the kind of situation had happened to him before, more than once in Kissimmee during the 1940s. This kind of thing, being seen before arriving, appeared to run in the family. These are just some of the observations I noticed about the incident. This was my first experience at seeing something that would happen in the future. The car and people were clearly visible and solid. The people looked like my father and grandmother. I do not remember hearing the car, no engine sound. I do not remember seeing any smoke from the tailpipe either. The people in the car did not respond or react in any way to the two people that were waving at them from the side of the road. Back then, everyone would have waved back to small children that waved to them. My old lady sometimes remembered the incident, other times she could not. After this incident, I've never trusted my ability to identify people by sight. Finally, this situation appears to be common to my father's side of the family. I've also been seen in places before I arrived too. Note, my relatives on both sides of my family are psychic, psychotic, crazy, and or a combination of the last three. I'm probably the only normal one in the family. I'm sorry if you had to hear this, but I had to tell you. Thank you so much for reading this story, and I hope you don't run into anything that I experienced too. A friend of mine is a veterinary technician and has worked in numerous vet clinics over the years. There was one place that was strange though. All the techs at this one clinic would have frightening dreams about being chased through the clinic by something at one time or another. My friend had told me this, and I asked if she ever had this dream, and she said no, not yet. I would often go with her when she had to take care of the animals over weekends or holidays and help out. One night, it was my turn. It was a clear dream, and everything appeared real. I found myself running through the clinic with the feeling that there was something behind me, just beyond my sight, and that this entity didn't want me there. I also think it enjoyed the chase, because I was somehow in its place or frame, or more closer to its existence where it could reach me. I was overwhelmed with fear, but I remember wondering why this was happening to me because I didn't work there. I remember stopping just before I got to the kennel room, turning around and yelling, "Hey, I don't work here." Suddenly, I was awake, like someone had flipped a switch, and I never had that dream again. This place had a higher number of deaths associated with surgeries than any other clinic my friend had worked at. They also had problems with some of their equipment turning on and off, batteries draining, tools missing, that sort of thing. Anyway, the owner sold the place, and now it's an eye clinic. I've often wondered if any of those people had strange dreams. Thanks for reading. And so I was talking to the man, and I was talking to him, and I was like, "Yo, why don't you like my peanut butter? It's better than..." Oh shoot, I'm recording. Oh my gosh, sorry guys. I was just having a conversation with myself about what kind of peanut butter I like. Oh my god. All right. Hey, it's Halloween. I'm very thankful for that. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, because if you don't subscribe, then I won't actually, be able to share this video with other people who may like this. But seriously, guys, no, it's Halloween, and we're having a little bit of fun. Another Halloween video for you guys, and I wanted to close out your night. Maybe Halloween's over by now. I really hope not by the time this video goes up, but I just wanted to say that Halloween is an amazing time to actually bond with your family, and all these holidays coming up really are. That being said, I just want to emphasize how important it is to keep your kids safe during the holiday. And you teenagers out there, don't stay up too late outside, because I know you want to have fun and it's Halloween and you want to do something crazy and make it a night to remember and everything, but please understand that there are crazy people out there. And if you learn from anything from the stories, not these stories, but maybe stories you heard on other channels, is that you don't stay up late at night and you don't do anything that's crazy, because if you do, then things can happen. So just wait until you get older, be in a group as always, and just make sure you stay safe, because that's important. You don't want anybody to, hurt themselves. You don't want anything to happen. Like I said, there are pedophiles out here. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. There's lots of things out there that you don't want to deal with. So just saying, just be safe, and parents, protect your kids. Make sure everything's okay when you're out there trick-or-treating with them, and make sure they're not getting any suspicious looking candy either, because like I said, it's horrible out there sometimes with people, and you don't know what things people have in their mind and what they're going to do to kids. So just keep that in mind, and good night, good morning, and I'll see you in the next video. Love you guys as always.